Yo, what's going on out there, YouTube? It's SEL0320 representing JVS. So I am leaving church right now. I'm about to go home. But I thought that this would be a really good, dope time to actually just talk to you guys about my thoughts and perspective on the suggested, unanimously thoughts on Avengers Infinity War. Now, if you haven't seen the movie, don't listen to anything I'm going to say, because this is complete spoiler territory. I haven't even done our spoiler review yet. I'll probably get that done later on tonight after Westworld, maybe earlier, I'm not really sure, as I still need to do My Hero Academia reaction and discussion about that. But let's go ahead and just break these down, okay? I'll name them and then I'll come back to them and talk about them. Let's say one thing was the Incredible Hulk. His absence in the fight, his perspective in the fight, and what happened ultimately with Bruce and Hulk towards the very end of the third act. Peter Quill, Star-Lord himself. When they had Thanos beat, when Peter Parker and Tony had the gun, then Star-Lord decided he couldn't let it go, and ultimately Thanos got out. What else? Vision, or the absence of Vision, in the sense that he supposedly was the strongest Avenger, but yet he was able to be tailored and brought down by one of the persons from the Dark Order that was relentlessly on him and really had put a damper on him from the very get-go. The ending itself, a lot of people have different perspectives on it, just because people have said openly that, okay, you're gonna kill most of the next generation of Avengers ultimately and leave all the OG characters involved, such as Tony Stark, Steve Rogers, Incredible Hulk, and you leave all of them alive, but you kill Black Panther, you kill Bucky, you kill Doctor Strange, you kill the Walker himself. These are all different things that people have suggested as being negatives about the film. Another negative a lot of people would talk about would be the pacing, the process between trying to juggle between all these different characters and ultimately it technically failing in a lot of people's perspectives of how you progress from one side, you got another group of people talking about another thing, another group of people talking about another thing, and it's like somewhere in between, like character arcs and certain tropes just don't work because certain characters aren't necessarily needed, and it's like, what's really happening? This is me talking about this from a critical side based on what people's perspective is on what the negatives are. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to dissect each one of those different things that I labeled and talk about my thought process on them. First up, like I said, the Hulk. In the very beginning of the film, in the first 6 minutes of the film, forget the dude's name, the wizard that's on the Dark Order side, talks to one of the other persons and it's like, oh, let him have his fun, talking about Thanos, because the Hulk gets bucked, tries to go at Thanos, and the Hulk gets the brakes beaten off of him bad. Like, he gets beat down so bad that like he was knocked out, and the only reason why he survived is because Heimdall, now I don't know his reason behind it, I think more so that Heimdall knew that Earth needed to be warned, and so he decided to not only spare one of Hulk's friends' life, but bring him back to Earth so he can at least warn them. Because I think he felt that Hulk wouldn't survive it, and that Thor would survive the ultimate imminent blast that happened, and so he sent him back. But the whole process is that after he got beat down, Hulk got beat so bad that he was afraid. Hulk legit would not come out because he was afraid of what this man's capability was. He couldn't do it. He was like, I'm not gonna go back and do this. And the reality is, what's gonna have to happen is Hulk and Banner are finally gonna come onto this symbiotic stage where they work together to get through this, which will make a better Hulk ultimately in the long run. Because they've been tiptoeing around this with Hulk being Hulk for 2 years straight without Bruce being able to break through from it. And now you got, ironically, a Hulk that is afraid because he's been humbled. He got beat down, and he knows that this man not only could kill him, that he is not the strongest there is. He's never had that ever happen before, ever. Okay? 1. 2, Peter Quill. Peter knows and gets the understanding that the love of his life, granted, he had to kill his own dad. Granted, he lost his mother at the hands of his own dad. Granted, his only dad that he really ever had, which was Yondu, died. And so all he really has is this family. Groot is kind of like his kid. The rest of the Guardians are his family. And Gamora is like his wife, ultimately, in so many different ways. Even Thanos said, I like this guy. Because he was ultimately willing to do what he had to do to respect his woman's wishes. When he found out what Thanos did, now, I agree, it is his fault. I agree that he shouldn't have, done that. But the reality is, unless you're in that situation, you know what I'm saying, like, you're emotionally compromised, the one last person that you really love and care about has died at the hand of the man that's right in front of you. We already know Tony did the same thing. Tony did the same freaking thing, bruh. As soon as he found out what happened to his parents, he went off on Bucky. He almost killed Bucky at the expense of his own soul and the group. He didn't care. And so it's like, you can't expect Peter to not do what Tony did. He was emotionally compromised, and that put him in the state that he was in. Now, I'm not saying that what he did was wrong and it put everybody's life in, absolutely, but I can't fault the man. Ultimately, as a person, as a consumer, as a viewer, I can't fault him because I can't say I wouldn't do the same exact thing. I don't know. I would never been part in that kind of situation. So from a realistic standpoint, yeah, I don't know. From the story standpoint and from the overarching, it would have benefited for him just to wait until the gauntlet was off. Absolutely. I'm not from a dramatic standpoint. I get his dramatic, emotional esteem because everybody was emotional after what happened to Gamora. Everybody in the movies there was emotional. Even Thanos. Vision was compromised based on his hubris and his humanity. In my personal opinion, Tony had alluded to he's evolving more than I ever could have imagined. He is becoming a man. And the guy that stabbed him even said, like you're so fragile, you like a man. That is in the writing. That is in the details. So what I'm saying is that when they were in Scotland, him and Wanda were talking, like, he wanted to go away. He didn't want to fight. Out of necessity, he found out that Tony was missing. So like, he's like, all right, I got to do something about this. But ultimately, he was like, I don't want this. I want you. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like, when he got snuck, like, he even said, like, that wasn't supposed to happen. Like, his body was compromised. So not only was his heart not in it, but his body was compromised. From a physical standpoint, there was nothing he really could do. Now, in the scope of what we've seen Vision do, be worthy enough to pick up Thor's hammer, it's unheard of, and it's unthinkable and unsensible for us to believe that he would be beat by somebody that Steve Rogers could actually beat. So I get that. From a plot standpoint, I get that. But from a relational, emotional standpoint, he wasn't where he needed to be to win that fight anyway. So I can't sit there and use that as a nitpick narrative negative, but I get why people would possibly do that, okay? Now, the very end of the film. Now, this one is going to be a little bit more harder to debate and negate. The reality of them killing off all the future generational people is a tale, in the sense that, not a tale, but a tale that they're going to be brought back. Because you can't have a Black Panther, Doctor Strange, Guardians of the Galaxy 3, whatever, without all these characters that actually died. As a matter of fact, all the next generation of people died. And it's like, you can't have a Black Panther without Black Panther, even though technically you can have a Shuri. Technically, you still could have a Guardians of the Galaxy because Rocket Raccoon is still alive. and we don't even know what happened to Nova Corps, so you can bring back Nova. Anyway, I'm just saying that I get that. I'm not faulting that. I'm not coming for that. What I'm saying, though, is that that doesn't excuse the fact that even though all these characters will eventually probably brought back to life, it doesn't excuse the fact that they didn't die. They died. And the reality is that are lovers of these characters, that are lovers of these people like Spider-Man, and like they are brought with an overbearing feeling of emotion because of seeing and witnessing characters they've put investment into. So it's like, yes, I could critically say, well, these characters are going to be brought back to life. So it's like, really, what those real stakes? Technically, no. But from a surface level standpoint, the fact that they did eradicate them and kill them, and they poofed into nothing, that doesn't take away from that thing that they actually did. And that, to me, is what gives me the reality that I respect Marvel for doing that. Because they could have easily been like, nope, they stopped Thanos, everything was fine. No, they died. And yes, they can be brought back to life. But the reality of it is this, and this is my personal prediction. I'm not sure if it's going to be right or not. If, hypothetically speaking, Steve Rogers and Tony Stark work together to get the gauntlet off of Thanos, and they happen to get the actual Soul Stone, the only way they can use the Soul Stone is they have to sacrifice a life to do that. The ironic part of the fact that the person and the keeper and the holder of the stone was the Red Skull makes me believe that Steve Rogers is going to sacrifice himself so Tony can bring the people back to life with the Soul Stone. We never even saw the Soul Stone work minus the actual snaps. We don't even know the capacity of its usage, right? So what I'm proposing is that Steve Rogers is going to sacrifice himself in Avengers 4 to bring everybody back to life, and Tony is going to have to be the person to do it. That will be his crucible. That will be the thing that I can't do this avenging anymore. And I think that that would be beautiful symmetry. I think that that would add weight and value to not just the people that died in this one, but the fact of self-sacrifice that they emulated. And even like Vision said, like, you laid down your life for millions of people. Why would you not do that? And I think that honestly, that would be the perfect end to Iron Man to stop, and the perfect symmetry of Captain America's legacy to be left over. And I think that they would do it. I think that they legit would do it. And I think that even with Doctor Strange giving up the Time Stone, he saw the possibility of them winning, but it's at a cost. It's with the end game. And I don't think that the end movie is going to be named Endgame. Somebody said or proposed that. When I looked at the very end of the film and the letters, it showed Avengers Infinity War and the line in between. Those words fused together and showed significance around a G. I think it's going to be Infinity Gauntlet or Avengers, something with the Infinity Gauntlet, honestly, just because of the way that it showed up. And I'll show that picture a little bit later on. What other negatives did I want to talk about? Oh, pacing. So this is the thing about pacing. I think that when you have, I don't know how many characters in this movie, characters you didn't even see on the main poster, characters that were just all over the place, I think that it was unavoidable for them to have some form of pacing issue just because of the processing of the script, of trying to give people airtime to do within a window of 2.5 hours. Even if this had been a 4-hour movie or a 3-hour movie, this was, to me, a scripting technical achievement to be able to place all these characters and give them any form of shine whatsoever. And that's why when you see characters that have never met each other before, that's why you have so much more influence, because wow, like, this is great. Like, to see Rocket and Thor and Rocket and Guardians of the Galaxy and Thor, it's like, it's magical, because you're trying to figure out how do these characters work inwardly together. The other thing that was interesting is how all these different characters were split up so evenly. Specifically the fact that Tony and Steve didn't even see each other the entire film, but yet they stood their ground to what they needed to do. And that's going to bring back to a head come Avengers 4. I think that honestly, that's more of a fault when it came to Feige and Marvel Studios when it came to the marketing. I think that this movie should have been marketed as a two-parter. I think they should have just went on, just gave the people the name instead of trying to be so mysterious, because with the mysterious aspect of it, people think, okay, this is the end movie, and led to believe that they're stupid and perceiving that this movie is it. Now, for kids and young adults and stuff like that, they might be like, if they don't know the comics, you're like, man, I can't believe this happened. Man, that's such a bummer. That's why people were like, man, feeling that's it. But us comic people, we know, like, people that follow this along, like, you know, this can't be it. And I think that they should just market that accordingly. They should have said that this is going to be a two-parter. Now, I think that it does remove from the effect from people not knowing. But I think that it would have helped on a critical standpoint, because it would alleviate people's perspective on these changes with the pacing, because this isn't the overarching story. The story itself is going to bridge itself and continue on long after Captain Marvel's been introduced, which you don't know. The end credit did show Nick Fury illuminating that Captain Marvel would be the thing that he needed help from more than anybody else. So this is my thing. I think that the pacing does have its ups and downs in terms of the way that they process in between scenes and segments, but there was never a point that I felt like it deflated anything. I think there's certain moments where, especially my second viewing, when I was looking at some of the comedic times, it was just kind of unnecessary. I think that the comedic stuff in this one was unnecessary, but I think it was funny just because of the serious tone. The serious tone of the nature of the film allowed me to be able to be on board when any of the comedic moments happen. Now, some comedic moments fall flat, and it just kind of like, why was this scene in here? And then also, like, there are certain characters that just didn't need to be in the movie whatsoever. And there are holes in the sense of pacing. When you see the beginning of the movie, you don't understand what happened to Asgard. Like, you know that half of them died, supposedly what Thor said. But where's Valkyrie? Because she was on the ship with them. Was there a separate ship? Was Korg on the other ship? Like, you just don't really know. And that's a hole, because they could have easily defined and said that, but they couldn't spend too much time on that. And that's where I say that it was unavoidable. Some of the critiques when it came to the plot poisoning because of pacing. It was just kind of an unavoidable thing in my personal opinion. So that is me going over all the different plausible and suggested negatives, where all of them are merited. So any person that's a critic, I'm not coming for them. I'm not saying that they're wrong, but I have an answer to every single one of those narrative negatives, or any of those personal perspective narratives that people are looking at it from the outside looking in. I'm looking at it from every single side. And I think that the film, yeah, all those things can be identified as negatives, but they don't take away from the emotional impact of the film. The reality of this is a perfectly toned film. They make, you know, different funny references. I think that this would be a perfect example. Thor, in fact, is the best Thor that they have done in all these movies in this film, because not only is he shown as a god, not only is he shown as a person of emotion and of strength, but like, he blinds himself from his pain with his humor. And it's like, even in spite of his humor, you can see what's going on. And I think that's the overarching of this film, that Thor's outlook on this is what the movie is. Identifiable, yes, these are a world of heroes that try to do great things. Yes, they do have humorous moments that do identify each and every one of their characteristics in some way, shape, or form. All of them have different funny moments. But this is a sad situation that there's no way that you can come back from that. You know what I'm saying? Like, and not be affected. By the time Avengers 4 does come out, yes, they're probably going to bring all those characters back, but that doesn't change how they felt. That doesn't change how people will feel. And it doesn't change the fact that this happened. And I think that that's the reality of this movie, that yes, all these things are going to be changed irrevocably, but that doesn't negate the fact that the Russos didn't do it in the film. And I think that that's so dope. Like, I appreciate the tone, I appreciate the way and the movement of this actual story because of what they actually did. They had the cojones to do it. You know what I'm saying? And I give him all respect for it. And I haven't rated this film yet, but more and more I think about it, man, like all the negatives, all the nitpicks that I even talked about in the 20 minutes I've been talking now, like, they're just nitpicks. You know what I'm saying? Like, I don't know, man. And I think that it's even harder to look at the OG characters and see that they failed. They failed. And they had to sit there and reap those rewards and watch and look and see the people that they love are gone. You know what I'm saying? And I feel bad for Tony. Like, the crazy thing, this is the crazy joint. In Age of Ultron, Tony saw this joint happen. And from his perspective, he doesn't know who's alive. You know what I'm saying? And so it's like he literally saw his prophecy unfold in front of his eyes. And part of the reason, even in Spider-Man Homecoming, that he didn't want Peter to get too involved is exactly what happened to Peter. And it's like, he's wrecked, bro. I don't see him, when this is over with, I think that he's going to be done. And I think that Tony is going to be done. I think that Steve is going to sacrifice himself. I think that's just going to happen. It's like, this is the direction that their characters are going to go on. We're going to have a deeper discussion about this probably on Monday. I just want to talk to you guys about my thought process on these proposed negatives on this film that I find very good. Very good. I still think that Winter Soldier is my favorite, but this ties as my second. This does. I'll say that. I'll say that on record, that Black Panther and this are tied for my number 2. Guardians of the Galaxy probably my number 3. Iron Man 2, my number 4, but this is tied for my number 2. And I think that even in hindsight of like the stupid mistakes people made, the unnecessarily used characters, like characters that weren't there, characters that were there, the fact that you got Ant-Man and Wasp is coming out, it has to be taking place before this movie. It wouldn't make sense otherwise. The fact of characters that you know for a fact died that shouldn't die, that are going to be definitely brought back. All those different things do not take away from the emotional impact you feel at this film. If you don't accept that, then you're in denial based on what the movie did as a whole. You know what I'm saying? So I think this is an achievement from the MCU standpoint. And I think that, I don't know if they can do anything like this again. This is season 7 of Walking Dead. This is Breaking Bad final episode, final season. This is, you know what I'm saying, Vic Mackey after his team dies in the Shield. And you know what I'm saying? Like, this is the pinnacle to me of what they could do, unless they pull out a hat trick and give us a World War Hope. If they give me that, dope. If they give me a Secret Invasion, dope. You know what I'm saying? Because they didn't identify or say why Black Widow has a blonde hair now. Like, I mean, I'd assume that they are under disguise. Same thing with Wanda not using her Russian accent. I would assume that they're trying to hide who they are, but, you know what I'm saying, that's a whole plot thing. As I said, the plot is poison based on the perspective of time and what they try to do, but that doesn't take away from the narrative for me. I appreciate the tone, appreciated the score, appreciated the humor that they did use, and they did alleviate certain things out, but it doesn't take away from the emotional impact of the narrative to me. So yeah, if you haven't seen the movie and you're sitting there listening to all these different negatives, I don't know why you would do that, why you do that to yourself, because I just definitely went through a lot of negatives and definitely not as spoilers. But even in all those negatives, I can promise you, you're going to have a great ride. You're going to definitely see something unlike any Marvel movies you've seen. In my opinion, I think it was one of their best. So hopefully y'all enjoyed this dissection of the negatives of Infinity War. And I don't know how I'm going to do my spoiler review now because I've gone through so much. But there's still so much to say. So much to say. Yeah. Keep it locked. JVS, we ain't gonna stop. Leave a like if you enjoyed this. Peace, guys. I'm out.